The tradition of death cafes sort of comes from this Swiss sociologist called Bernard Kretaz. He put it really nicely and said that for a short time, and thanks to death, people are born in authenticity. When people talk about death, something sort of magical seems to happen, and all their affectation and their pretension and all the facade, all the rubbish, the nonsense and the bullshit just seems to fall away.
Thank you very much.
That's exactly what it is. Sorry.
If you try and engage someone in a conversation about death, if I was to engage someone in a conversation about my father's death, I think it would probably be quite a negative reaction. I think they'd be very uncomfortable, and understandably so. I think because it's ingrained in us to react that way.
What I got from the Death Cafe, most of all, I think, is that death is a subject that we should be talking about, and it's a bit like sex was 50 years ago, a subject that nobody ever mentioned, and that now you can talk about it quite freely. Well, I think death should be like that. We should be able to talk about it freely.
Sex and death are very similar. They're both intimate and vulnerable, and nothing like they're portrayed in the media.
You got to sing the words. I don't know the words.
Oh, is it me you're looking for? I can see in your eyes, I can see in your smile. What's the next line? I don't know, because I'm Polish.
Hi, I'm Ludovic Hughes, and on the 31st of March 2011, my father killed himself.
My father died when I was 13, and it was all kind of swept under the carpet. Nobody talked about it, nobody mentioned it. I didn't go to the funeral, it wasn't thought suitable for children.
And I feel very much that a way of my dealing with it has been to suppress certain feelings, because it's almost been there's been this taboo.
My name's John Underwood, and I run a company called Impermanence, which does community engagement. So we've got a number of different projects. We've got Death Cafe, and we've got a website called Find Me Help, which is a sort of one-stop shop for people who are in the last years of life and those who are closest to them.
Well, I went to the Death Cafe as a result of going to another meeting, which was on the subject of why are we scared of death? And they mentioned the Death Cafe in that meeting, and I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. So I got in touch with the organiser, and that's all.
I'm Neil. I teach creative writing at Goldsmiths College. In the past I've been a eulogist, which came about by accident.
I'm Sarah. I've experienced in the last couple of years the death of my partner, and I've also almost lost both of my children at various stages in their lives, so it's something that's very present for me.
I'm Steve, and I'm here because you invited me to come here. And I guess it's relevant because I lost my partner, my wife of 25 years, about 5 years ago.
Yeah, I'm Nick. I'm interested in the whole subject of death because I think our culture should be talking about it much more than it does. I think we need to kind of bring it out into the open, so to speak.
I'm Carrie, I agree. My mother died when I was 2 years old, and it has a daily impact on me still, even to this day. And I thought it would be an interesting thing to sit down and talk to people about.
I'm Sabrine. I come from Belgium, and I thought it would be interesting to see other people's points of view on it.
You both said it's the one thing we've got in common, and I think it's a certain fact that you're going to die, but the one thing we haven't got in common yet. What we've got in common is life.
I know what you're saying about life is guaranteed, but actually it is kind of guaranteed to us. But the thing, now we're alive, there's only one thing that we know will happen. Yes, we will, but the one thing we know is going to happen, whoever we are, wherever we are, is we're going to die. And so let's just talk about it.
Yeah. No, this whole business of not wanting to confront death is because we're frightened. We're frightened.
You talked a little bit about the way that we don't talk about death, like growing up in this vacuum where it was all around but not talked about, really had a profound effect on me.
Everything changes, I think. Everything changes and you become a different person as a result of losing that person that is so closely connected to you.
I spent half my life in Mexico where the attitudes are a bit different. But there's also a very strong sense, which may be perhaps partly a mixture of Catholic and indigenous traditions, in which people are quite conscious of the temporary nature of life.
In other cultures, death is just about the house, like an old cat that just sort of chills around the house. It sort of walks about, and it's everywhere. You see it, like, and the treatment of it isn't so kind of revered and feared.
I think Mexicans are more upfront about death than we are, partly because it's much more present within the environment. One of the things that's happened in England over the last 50 years, which in a way is a very good thing, is that people don't have much experience of death. So young people commonly live without having dead brothers and sisters and without having dead uncles, and they go through their whole childhood without being confronted by death.
But I think we fundamentally, until we've seen death and touched death, we don't believe we're going to die.
Yeah.
We don't believe it. We think we're going to go on forever.
Do you think that people that talk about death and are accepting of death are better prepared?
I think there's a certain human outpouring and grieving and healing that needs to happen in order to get, I was going to say back to normal life. I don't know that life's ever normal in the way it was before that death, like you were saying. But to some sense of, I can be happy, I can be fulfilled, I can be me.
But the minute you talk about death, it kind of creates an intimacy.
When people talk about death, something sort of magical seems to happen, and all their affectation and their pretension and all the facade, all the rubbish, the nonsense and the bullshit just seems to fall away.
I work with children, and they're not my children, so when they ask questions about death and what, it's very difficult.
And you can't try and tell a 5-year-old what loss is. Something you can teach, I think, is something which has to be sort of embedded in your surrounding.
If they're told from a young age that death is terrifying and death is horrible, and that it's so scary that adults can't even talk about it, I think that's not very good for kids.
I think children should be made aware of death when members of the family die around them, and they shouldn't be isolated from it and shouldn't be hidden from them. Yeah, it's a big part of life.
One thing I'm thinking about as we sit here, just what about considering your own death? Do you?
I want my life to be as much as possible in the frame that tomorrow I won't be here.
Yeah.
Then I can, my wife said that on video, she said, I want to go today feeling, today was a good day.
I think it makes me want to connect more. I think the most important human quality, if you like, is the ability to connect with other people.
I do think in accepting how temporary this is, but that temporariness is a miracle, and accepting my death in a realistic way, that I'm happier than I've ever been.
go. It's really cold.
Yeah, I would go too.
And are you afraid of death?
Other people's, not mine. Which is maybe rather strange. Being left behind is something that is far scarier, I think, than actually going on the journey.
I want to go home to homeland and kiss my mother because I miss her so much. Love you, Mom.
Before I die, one thing I would like to do is leave a long-lasting legacy that somebody or everybody would remember me. Maybe invent something never invented before. And also make sure our kids are well off. Yeah, that's one thing I would like to do before I die.
But how do you feel about this moment where the lights go out? What's your perception of that?
You come into this world kicking and screaming and vomiting and shitting yourself, and as an infant, and you go out of it in the same way, if nature allows.
So many of the events, the major events of one's life are kind of shared, but death is, it's just you, and it's the time to really show yourself and to show really what you're made of. So there's a sort of looking forward to that moment.
I've never met death before, so obviously no point being scared of something that you don't know about what it's going to be like. So.
No, okay, well, this is
When we were getting tricep, bicep, tricep, tricep, this step and this step.
I don't think I'm afraid of dying.
No, I'm not afraid of it. Because no one lives forever.
I think it's important for us all to see that we have a place in history. But there were a couple of thousand years before me when I wasn't around, and there will no doubt be many thousands of years after me. And it's important to see that you've just got this slot.
Nothing lasts forever. That's just man's nature.
And I think it's very important to feel connected to the people around you, and also connected to the past and how it is we have reached the point where we are now, and then the continuation, what will go on afterwards. That was what I wanted to say.
What would you want to do before you die?
I think I've done it already. I've lived life to the full.
Yeah?